we don't think that we don't want to be held accountable, but part of it is I don't want to be held to certain constraints. I should be able to make the choice. But the problem is, are you actually getting your own reflection to say, is this the best choice to be making?
Okay.
And once you start getting that, some folks are like, I don't want you asking me this because I actually know what the answer is, and it's not the answer that I want to give you.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how. What's the point of holding your team accountable if you stop showing up halfway through? I know. You don't think we're talking to you, but I gotta be honest. We see this happen all the time. Gwen and me, right? We hear a business owner launches a new process. You know what? I have worked for these business owners. I can't speak for Gwen, but I will tell you, I've worked for these business owners. They launch a new process. They're all excited. And then life happens. Busy season at work happens. Something happens. They get distracted. They skip a few check-ins. And before long, the whole thing falls apart. Right? Somebody on the team stops participating. Other people are grumbly because they're still doing it, but they don't feel like anybody's paying any attention. Then they find out the one person on the team's not doing it. Nobody said anything to them. And they get frustrated. So then everybody quits. And then what happens? The owner is ticked off because accountability has turned into just another abandoned initiative on the team. Today, we are going to talk about why that happens. Why does accountability fail, especially for leaders who know better? And how do you fix it without becoming a micromanager? Because you know what? You don't want to be one. If you want to be one, you're probably not listening to our show anyway. Nobody wants to work for one. And so, Gwen, talk to me about how this falls apart. And actually, you know what? You're the person who came up with this idea for the episode. Give us the backstory.
So the backstory is simple. We're very focused on accountability, and I was just recently at an event and was talking with someone who's been a part of our accountability process, and she has her own clients and was interviewing. They're part of their client intake is to meet with all of the members of the team, and the members of the team were complaining like, yeah, we try to implement different types of accountability, and it works for a little bit, and then it completely falls apart, and the owner isn't doing their piece. And so then we stop doing our piece, but then they get mad. And, and it was interesting because her perspective was like, well, they should be doing their piece. And it's like, yeah, but that's the problem, that we think accountability is about doing the thing. But accountability isn't about doing the thing. It's about the process of reflecting on doing, or in some cases not doing, the thing, whatever that happens to be. And the reflection takes two people.
Okay, I want you to pause right there.
Okay,
I'm pausing right there. Because when you've told me that story, I had a memory of an instance fairly early in my professional career when I was a brand new manager and I was starting to lead other leaders. And I was kind of walking through how I train people to somebody who was on my team, but more of a peer level. And she was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not going to do that? It was pretty much like, okay, so you show them how to do it. Then you watch them do it. Then they do it. And then you check in on them doing it, over time to see kind of what's going on. And she was like, I don't parent adults. I've got enough of my own kids. I don't parent adults. I tell them what to do, and if they're not going to do it, that's on them. That's not on me. Okay, now pick back up.
Okay, so I love that you did that because that leads to another one of my friends that was sharing a story recently, which was, in this case, she was the person that was in the learning role, right?
Mhm.
Was at the early stages. And her boss had the same attitude as this person that you're just describing. I don't parent adults, right? But it wasn't even that. It was, I don't want to be micromanaging my people because micromanaging is evil and bad and all the things that get said about it. But the problem is micromanaging has also expanded way beyond what it really means to say anytime I am helping you and directing you is micromanagement.
Mm.
And that's not actually true. Because what in her case, and like, this is a person I know, totally competent, super, super capable, right? She ended up having to do, and I don't think she was even exaggerating, 17 revisions on a process deliverable thing
Mhm.
because the boss didn't want to be micromanaging her, right? And that was because I know leadership is not micromanaging and I want to be a good leader. And so that would be micromanaging if I was helping her.
So I'm going to let you finish the whole project and then I'm going to tear it apart because that makes you feel
Well,
good.
but I'm not even going to tear it apart in detail. I'm just going to say, well, maybe you should have done this. Think about this other thing. Why don't you go back and bring it back again? Well, what about this other piece? And
Mhm.
what, back to 17 revisions, right? And so the piece here is in that case, they weren't giving enough direction. What you were talking about was giving direction,
Mhm.
not micromanaging. Micromanaging is when this person that, you have trained has been doing this job for 6 months. And every day you're like, did you do it exactly the way I want you to do it? Is it exactly the way that
Right.
I need it to be? Right? That's micromanaging, not letting people do a job that they know how to do, that they have been
Mhm.
trained to do, that they've got the information to do, and that you're watching every step. That's the micro piece of the
Mhm.
management piece. But giving direction, giving training, doing any of those things is not it. And so the problem here that we have with accountability is it's gotten reduced to did you do the task or did you not do the task? Which is not accountability. That's about whether or not people are reliable,
Mhm.
right? Reliability is you know what you need to do and you've done it
Right.
or you haven't, right? And sometimes we're not as reliable as we want to be. And that's when accountability can be really valuable is to help us figure out what prevented us from being as
Mhm.
reliable as we want to be, right? But the challenge that I see that really becomes the big issue, particularly in entrepreneurial businesses, is we want our teams to be accountable, but we don't want to have to be accountable ourselves. We
Yeah.
want all the flexibility and all the things that we have been told entrepreneurship is supposed to be. We should be able to do whatever we want, whenever we want, and however we want, and any of those kind of things.
Mhm.
And we hired adults, so they should be able to do an adult job, and we shouldn't have to train them unless we want to train them, but we shouldn't have to train them. They should be able to just absolutely know everything. And they should understand all of the reasons that we do all the things we do, because why wouldn't they? They're so obvious to us because we're an entrepreneur that, of course they would know all of the reasons behind all of these things. And so the pieces that we have to do to be accountable, we often like, nope, not going to do it, not going to do it. And then we wonder why our people aren't accountable. Well, it's because accountability is a two-way street. It's got give and take. It's got to go both directions. And so to me, this is the piece where a lot of times when accountability falls apart, the CEO, the entrepreneur, the founder, whoever wants to blame the people, but really the reason it fell apart was you.
But isn't it the right or the privilege of the business owner or the CEO to pick and choose what they do? I mean, isn't that the whole like structure of a team, right? You hire people to do what you tell them to do, but you don't hire people to tell you to do what to do or you know what I was trying to say. I'm not going to try
Yeah.
to repeat that sentence.
So yes, but
Okay.
part of accountability is making sure that the communication lines are clear.
Hmm.
And the only way the communication lines are clear is if you're communicating. And accountability is a process of real accountability, not just checking off task box, things. But real accountability is about communication. And so when you stop communicating, then how can they actually be accountable?
Okay, let me try to recap a little bit. Make sure that I'm tracking here. So you started by saying, accountability gets misdefined, misrepresented as, did you do the thing?
Did you do
And right. And that is actually reliability, right? I said I was going to do a thing. I did it. That's me being reliable. You ask me if I did the thing. You're just asking me if I'm reliable. You're tracking, right? It's a trust building exercise, so to speak. Accountability is about reflection. And then right now, you also kind of have indicated that accountability is a partnership because it's a two-way street. And
the key here is reflection requires someone outside of your brain, because our brain will tell us whatever we want to hear. Our brains are very complicated things, and true reflection takes some outside perspective.
Okay. And that's where the partnership comes.
This is the partnership. This is the two-way street.
Between the business owner or entrepreneur and their team, or maybe peers. And then you've also said, so we've got accountability is about reflection, accountability is a partnership, and then you also said accountability is about communication.
And to me, all of those three things are highly related.
Okay. Connect the dots for me.
Okay. So back to reflection requires a partnership. Mm-hmm. We can self-reflect. I'm not saying that you can't self-reflect, but I will bet dollars to donuts every single solitary time. Better reflection with somebody else, because they'll ask the question or make you think about the thing that your brain, your subconscious is preventing you from asking yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so because it's a reflection with another person, right, this is where the two-way street is. It's got to go back and forth, and therefore the communication piece of it.
Okay.
And so accountability isn't just about, did you do the thing? It is about the reflection of doing the thing. Was it the right thing? Was it the right thing at the right time? Was it the right thing at the right time given all of these other circumstances? If it wasn't the thing, what was preventing it from getting done? I mean, there's a lot of questions around that. And like I said, that takes a different person. The problem of leaving the leader out, whatever the leader role is in the reflection process, means that we're still kind of within our own echo chamber, right? Because we're at the same level and we're both agreeing that this is the thing to do. And if we're holding each other accountable, which could happen, the question is, does it align with where our leader wants us to be going? Doesn't actually help us if three of us are all going way off to the left when we're supposed to be going straight, even though we're all holding each other accountable to going off to the left. That's not actually productive accountability, right? So this is that whole piece of the entrepreneur has to be involved. And where I say they have to be held accountable is they have to be willing to commit to also being asked the questions from the people below them to make sure that they're all staying on track together. So it becomes, it's not as much of like, are you sure you should be doing this? But saying, I don't understand how this aligns with this thing. Right? And so back to the CEO, the entrepreneur being able to say, oh, I can see why you don't see how it aligns because I've put 48 dots in between the thing I said and the thing you know.
Right.
Here, let me draw you a path there. Right? But sometimes it's like, oh, the reason you can't see the line is because there is no line. I'm totally distracted.
Mm.
It was a shiny object. It was the thing that went off here. And you have to be willing to say, yeah, you're right. You shouldn't be doing that. That's this off here thing that's not really part of your world. So reflecting back as well.
Okay. So
you can't just you can't say, yeah, I'm not going to show up, because that's not being accountable.
yeah, but I think I have a hard time picturing a boss, any boss, going, okay, I've promised everybody weekly check-ins of some sort. And we've got, 3 big events coming up in the next month. Those weekly check-ins, that's 30 minutes for each team member. But, for me, that's going to be a total of 2.5 hours a week. I think we could all benefit from the extra time this month focused on the 3 events. I have a hard time believing that any manager would say, oh, those check-ins are pointless. I'm above them. And I'm afraid they're going to ask me hard questions at those check-ins. So I'm just going to cancel them all. I don't think anybody's walking around going, I don't want to be held accountable.
No one is saying that. But what they're finding is it's hard.
Okay. So what is it like? Because, because you're like, they don't want to be held accountable. But they're not walking around saying that. They don't think that. They don't know that, is what now you're saying. So what do they know? What do they see? How do they experience it?
What they see is that often it's obvious to them. Why can't it possibly be obvious to everybody else? Right? It's so obvious to me. How can they not know? What they will often see is, I tried it. This is the classic. I tried it once and it didn't work. That there's not enough investment to actually start seeing the benefit. Any process takes some time, and partly related to shiny object syndrome. It's like, oh no, I'm going to try this other thing. I've started, I got distracted, and I don't come back. And of course, one of the bigger issues is no one is in fact holding them accountable. Because no employee, well, not no, but almost no employee is ever going to say, hey, you didn't do your thing. Hey, you didn't do your thing. Hey, you didn't do your thing. Right? If I'm filling out a report that you're supposed to review every week and then have a meeting with me, even if it's only a 15-minute, I'm just, making something up here, right? You don't do it this week because, I've got this super important thing. Well, I kind of understand they were super important. And then the next week it doesn't happen because, I've got this other thing. And they're like, okay, well, I get that. And by the 3rd or 4th week, they're like, okay, so they're not actually looking at this report. We're not actually going to meet. I'm not, and they're not, most employees are not going to say, hey, what the hell? Why are you not meeting with me? Why are you not reading this report? Right? Because who's holding that person accountable to doing those things? Because it's easy for them to say that something else is more important. Because we all get caught up in the urgent, whatever that important, urgent thing is. Using your examples, like, I would be so much better off spending 2.5 hours doing something else. My question always is, but would you? But would you? What is that 2.5 hours that you're spending with your employees, with going through the process, actually going to save you in the long run? What if you're answering questions before they become problems? What if you're doing some of these other things? And so we aren't thinking that we aren't being held accountable, but who is actually calling us out on our action? Almost nobody.
Right.
Like I said, you could have an unusual employee that might be saying, no, need to know. Nope, not going to let you get away with this. But most aren't. Most are just going to say, well, if they don't care enough about it to do their piece, then why do I care enough about it to do mine? And so we don't think that we don't want to be held accountable, but part of it is, I don't want to be held to certain constraints. I should be able to make the choice. But the problem is, are you actually getting your own reflection to say, is this the best choice to be making?
Mm.
And once you
Okay.
start getting that, some folks are like, I don't want you asking me this because I actually know what the answer is, and it's not the answer that I want to give you.
Right. So, okay. So we've talked about where people get accountability wrong, like the wrong definitions. We've talked about what it really is. And just kind of to recap, right? It's partnership, it's reflection, it's communication. What does doing accountability well look like? Because from what you're saying, like most people have never seen it. So how on earth could they do it?
Well, and there's huge truth in that statement, right? Is that they've seen a piece of it and they think that's all there is to it. And often as the recipient of that, it was like, that didn't provide any value to me. Why am I going to do that to somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
Right? When someone's like, let's see your checklist. Did you do the things? Okay. I see you didn't do those. Get those done. That wasn't actually valuable to me. So why am I going to do that to somebody else? They're
Mm-hmm.
adults. They should be able to do the things. Right?
Right.
So that becomes the big piece. And so that really is the challenge. Is most people don't understand that the reflection part and the communication part allows you to start solving problems before they become problems,
Mm-hmm.
right? It helps people stay on task in the way that you want. And when your priorities have shifted, heaven knows it happens a lot, it allows you to be able to realize, oh, they're still going down path A, and we're actually on path A2. It's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit like A, but it's not exactly like A. And because it's not exactly like A, if they keep going, at some point it's going to be very divergent. But without that communication, and we think, this is the biggest issue of the whole thing. All of us, everyone, me included, everyone on the planet thinks that we're pretty good at communication because it is the number 2 milestone that we have in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Walking and talking. Those are the first 2 big milestones that most babies are all excited and celebrated for, is when they walk and when they talk, right?
Yes.
These are biggies. And so we have been talking, for all practical purposes, our entire lives.
Right.
And so we think we're good at it. And none of us are. None of us are. No matter how much energy we put toward it, we could still get better at it. And so this is one of the places that allows us to start working on our communication in that accountability piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't realize when it's just about, checking boxes, that's not communication at all. And that's why this reflection piece is so much more important. But as you said, most people don't talk about it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing is they're usually using anything that could be accountability as just an update. Did you or didn't you? It's just a verbal version of the checklist. Where are things? Are they done? Are they not done? Instead of really saying, well, I see you got that done, but why did you choose that over this other project first? Because there's obviously a reason you did. I need to understand that. Let's talk about, is that the best priority order in the future? Because we'll probably have a similar situation come up again. Instead of just saying, okay, well, at least you got that done, but let's get on this other one, right? It's the communication piece that is real accountability, and that reflection piece, which takes time. But this is where you now don't have to micromanage people, because they actually understand more about the choices that they're making, and they also understand more about how you would want them to make the choices.
Mm.
And so where often it goes wrong is we get to the point where we've been doing some of this, we drop off, and then we try to play catch up by micromanaging. And nobody likes that.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't like doing it, and I don't know hardly anybody who likes receiving it, right?
Right.
So it's like, oh, okay, well, but it's actually about the ongoing regular rhythm of communication and reflection, which is part of that communication process, that really makes accountability work. And when it's working well, you really aren't having to have hard conversations at all, because what's happening over time is everyone's getting clearer on the priorities, the thought processes, the decision, the internal decision trees that are going on, so that they can adopt them as well. And so now we don't have to do as much work. But the problem is, initially, it takes practice, and we have to get some consistency in. And most people don't stick with it long enough to get the consistency in to really see where the benefit starts paying off. I mean, it can pay off fairly quickly in small ways, but it can pay off hugely over time.
So how do they get the consistency?
Back to, they've got to have some form of accountability themselves. Right? It could be a coach, it can be a person above them, it could be a peer that, another peer that's trying to implement a similar system to say, double check that I'm doing this. It can be any way of that happening. And it can be the team, so long as the team really believes that you want to be held accountable.
How do you convince your team you really want to be held accountable?
It almost never works.
Okay. Maybe we shouldn't offer that as an option then, if it almost never
where
works.
It can work is where some of your team are like you and I, right? So you're not an employee.
No.
Right? You're an independent contractor. You're an entrepreneur. You come into this relationship so much more like a peer than an employee. Right. And so although we do have an accountability process, you can hold me accountable in the accountability process, because you come in very much like a peer, and I treat you like a peer. Right? Sophia, who's lovely, we love Sophia, but she would not think of herself as a peer. I would not think of her as a peer. And even if I told her to hold me accountable, she would not be able to hold me accountable.
Right.
Right. Even though she knows that I'm good to my word. Like I haven't ever presented saying, hold me accountable, when holding accountable, and then like she gets, totally yelled at, or none of those kind of things have ever happened to her. There's no reason that she would doubt that I wanted her to hold her accountable, but there is I'll say a power differential.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up Sophia as the example, because, what we're talking about really is, like, it can be your EA, but not necessarily. But it's hard to have somebody hold you accountable who, one, doesn't know the signs or symptoms of you. Like, I'm thinking of Sophia specifically, like why Sophia wouldn't be good at that is part of it is the power differential, right? Like, Sophia is early career, and she is somebody who is just like, well, Gwen's the boss. And, and she doesn't want to make you mad, right? Because she likes you a lot and all those things. But part of it is also, she doesn't know what it looks like when an entrepreneur gets in their own way.
Right.
Right? She is always going to assume that you didn't do what you said you were going to do because you got pulled into a different direction, because at her stage, she sees entrepreneurs get pulled in 100 different directions. And she is going to assume that you got pulled in that direction for good reason. And she's also going to assume that that good reason is not her business.
Right.
And all of those things are going to make her not even think about the fact you didn't do what you said you were going to do. Not that she'll say, oh, well, Gwen said she was going to do this, but it's not my place to ask. It's so, in her mind, not her place that she wouldn't even have the question pop up.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the piece, is if you find that you try to implement things that require consistency also on your part as an entrepreneur, and they fall apart and you want to blame everybody else, the first question is, but were you doing your piece consistently or not? And not saying even if you had a really good reason, right? Because the only good reasons are always, in my world, fire, flood, and blood.
Right.
Right. The good reason is the house was flooding. The good reason was my husband was in the hospital. The good reason wasn't that we have a big event coming and I needed the time back. That's not actually a good reason.
Right.
Right. Because that's not.
Sounds like a good reason, though. Sounds like a good reason.
But it does. It does sound like a very good reason. That's why I said there has to be truly a good reason, which to me is fire, flood, or blood. right? It has to be at that level. And if you find at some point you're always losing it, then it's probably you and not them, which means you need someone to hold you accountable to doing the piece to be able to get that done.
So with all of that being said, how do you fix it? Like, so you're that person, you're in this rinse and repeat cycle of we start a thing and it falls apart. And maybe it falls apart for the exact reason that you said, we're trying to get time back because we've got something big happening. Or maybe it's because, ooh, look, shiny. Or maybe it's because we've got that person on the team who hates doing it, hates the accountability process, whatever it is. They're vocal about hating it, and we're just sick and tired of hearing them. So we're like, fine, we're just going to stop doing it so we don't have to hear them complain, regardless of why it falls apart. Because I think the why it falls apart is not nearly as important as figuring out how do you fix it? How do you get back on track?
So this is back to where, we've heard it 1,000 times. Every therapist needs a therapist. Every coach needs a coach. Every person that is holding a team accountable needs someone to hold them accountable.
Okay, pause there and tell us, how do we find that person? What qualities do they need to have? Because, let's just say here at my house, right? There are some big projects we want to take on. It means that we need to save up a little money to take on these big projects because they cost money. I have another adult who lives in my house, right? He's my husband. He contributes income. His name's on the bank account, on the debit cards. My husband is a wonderful man who has many gifts in this world. Holding me accountable to savings and a budget is not one of those gifts.
So that's a place where you would need some outside perspective. Someone that you would trust and that you would respect and that you would listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where sometimes I say, and maybe you just don't actually want to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's okay. But then you can't be mad when the rest of your team isn't being held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is back to, are you going to do the thing that needs to be done?
Mm-hmm.
And so using this as an example, you need to have someone that will actually ask you the question, help you understand what's preventing you from saving money, if if that's going on, is able to help you reflect on that and problem solve on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, that's another reason why not just everybody can hold you accountable. Someone may be able to hold you accountable to one thing and someone else may not be able to hold you accountable, but they can hold you to another thing, right? So someone who can actually help you think through it. This is that reflection piece.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got to have enough experience, knowledge, understanding of whatever this issue is to be able to help you reflect on it. They don't necessarily have to be better at it than you, which is one of the things that people always assume. But they do have to be willing to show up in a consistent way. And that's the place where I think a lot of these things fall apart is I'm going to do this with my buddy entrepreneur.
Right.
Right. And is it in their natural tendency to do this?
Mm-hmm.
If it is, then maybe this won't be a problem. But if it isn't, who's holding them accountable to making sure that you're being held accountable? Right. Mm-hmm. Which is why sometimes this is why we pay people for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because what's making sure that they're holding you accountable is that you're paying them X amount every week, month, year, whatever the process is. And so that becomes, and if they don't, then you can say, I paid you for this. You're not doing this. I'm no longer paying you for this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But when we're doing the buddy thing, unless you have an equal thing that you're holding each other accountable for, and you both care enough about it and are more natural about one than the other, then often it ends up being not what I'd call an even exchange of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so a lot of times when accountability systems fall apart, it is because one person can't hold it for both people forever. At some point, they get exhausted.
Yeah.
If they're not getting some version of accountability, it may not be directly accountability, but some version of accountability back into the equation.
Okay.
So like
All
for
right.
me, I've always been fairly naturally accountable.
Mhm.
I've got good boundaries. I'm very good at showing up. There's certain things that make this relatively easy for me.
Mhm.
And so I've started accountability groups that have gone on for really long times. And people are always like, how does that happen? And it's like, because when I make that kind of commitment, I can keep that kind of commitment. But there's usually a point that I no longer want to be doing it because I'm carrying all the burden of the
Right.
accountability and no one's helping me be accountable back.
Yeah. Nobody's refilling the cup.
No one's refilling the cup. So this is why, if you need help hiring the coach, the consultant, the advisor,
Mhm.
who actually is going to do that. And that's what a lot of coaches are doing, is actually holding a space of accountability around certain topics.
Mhm.
So if you got, using your finance as an example, you could hire a finance coach
Mhm.
that would be looking at, your numbers. And if they were actually holding you accountable, truly accountable, it wouldn't be, did you or didn't you? It would be, okay, did you? How did that work? What were the things that were working about it? What about that can be replicated in other ways? Okay, what part didn't work? What was preventing that from working? Are there things that we learned on the working side that would help us on the non-working side?
Right.
Is this the thing that needs to be, it's a reflection process. And that's the piece that, like I said, almost everybody misses. We hear so many times people talk about, and we hold our people accountable. And when you check, they're not actually holding them accountable. They're just seeing if they're doing the thing.
Right. Or having them turn in checklists every week.
Yeah. It's like, that's not accountability. That's just
Mhm.
reporting.
Right. Okay, well, we are out of time. But I think, the bottom line here is that accountability will always fail when the leader stops paying attention. If you're a solopreneur, you probably already have somebody who is holding you accountable because you don't have a team for that feedback loop. For those of you who have a team, you just have to know that accountability, if it's really hard to manage your team, it's likely because you have stopped paying attention to parts of the process that are really important, or at least look important to your team, right? They take their cues from you. If you disengage, they disengage. But when you stay consistent, even in small ways, you signal to them that the work matters, they matter, and the system is worth doing. It's worth trusting. Now, if you've been listening and you're like, oh, yeah, that happens in my business too, right? You notice that accountability slips often. Maybe your team stops checking in. Maybe you find that, hey, I lose my motivation to follow through. It is time to reset. Now, you can go and reset all by yourself, right? Like you can take what we've talked about, you can check our other episode on accountability, and you can do that reset yourself, or you can get that outside perspective. A clarity call with Gwen is a great place to start for outside perspective because in just one session, you'll uncover why accountability keeps breaking down for you because your reason for losing accountability would be different than mine, right? And you can figure out how to rebuild a system that actually sticks. Now, I should also add, if you are somebody who has a team and you want to learn how to hold the team accountable, you don't want just accountability for yourself, but you want to learn how to hold the team accountable, you definitely want a clarity call with Gwen too, because she teaches this process to other business owners, other managers. So you're going to book your clarity call at everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity so that you can start leading with consistency that creates results, or at the very least, you get a little bit of that outside perspective that can be so valuable. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.